What's up? What's up, everyone? Matt Crane here, your host for the Power of Great podcast right here on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher. And I got to tell you, the hits keep on coming. Today, we've got my man, Dr. Will Moreland in the Power of Great Studios. And ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat. This gentleman is not only one of the most highly sought after leadership and professional development trainers in the world, but he has a story that embodies the power of great. You know, when I created this podcast, it was really built on the backbone of people recognizing that their current situation was not their defining moment. Understanding that true success is never measured by what you step out of, but what you're committed to stepping into. And so when I had the opportunity to start paying attention to Dr. Will Moreland, I was blown away at his professionalism. And then when I started digging into his background, I said, this gentleman right here is not only going to bring the energy, but he's got a story that resonates with so many of our guests. So before we introduce the man of the hour, Dr. Will Moreland grew up in one of the roughest cities in America, surrounded by gangs, drugs, and what seemed as a dead-end future. Dr. Will found himself headed in the wrong direction. Fast forward that 25 years, and now Dr. Will is recognized as one of the leading speakers in America for leadership, business success, and motivation. He's a best-selling author who has written over 40 books. He's an international speaker and business trainer, and Dr. Will is passionate about helping individuals, organizations, and corporations perform at their genius potential level. He entered the business and leadership consulting industry after serving in the United States Army for 8 years, and while in the Army, he served 2 deployments in Bosnia and Kosovo while stationed in Germany. Guys, I could do an entire podcast on this gentleman's resume and his bio, but I got to tell you, I'm too excited to get into the content. Dr. Will Moreland, welcome to the Power of Great, my man.
Boom, Matt. I've made it, man. This is it. This is the apex. This is what I've been waiting on, man, to be with Matt Crane, man. I'm ready, man.
I tell you what.
I'm prepared for this whole moment.
I tell you, I'm excited. And for those of you that are going to watch this video live, it hits 6 different continents on our YouTube channel. I'm so pleased and honored. And for those of you that are listening right now on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud, my man's got a shirt on that says, "Live Genius," because average is no fun. And I want to jump right into it, Dr. Will. You know, you were really given no chance. You know, roughest city in America, father in prison. Your mother was working so many jobs and was trying to take care of 2 children, and yet you decided to pivot. Let's talk about what it was like growing up in a rough area, knowing what you had as examples, and what really led you to that pivotal moment in your life.
You know, and once again, Matt, thank you for having me on here. To answer your question and to give the audience the short version, grew up in Compton, California, and every day, you know, our life was this whole idea of who got shot, who got robbed. But the pivot, to answer your question, the pivot was when I got a disruptor, and I called this gentleman a disruptor, and he was a California state judge, and he talked to me and he said, "Young man, you are headed nowhere fast. And you need to make a decision in your life. You need to make a choice in your life. And I want you to come back to my courtroom in 2 weeks and tell me what you're going to do with your life." And I call him my first disruptor because he was the first one that got me to start thinking about my future. Because he said if I didn't have a plan, that he was going to put me in one of the nice facilities in California, jail. And it was this 2-week span, man. It was this 2-week span. I walked around California, Hawthorne, California, wondering what I was going to do with my life. What was I going to do? What was I going to tell this judge? And then the second disruptor came into my life by the name of Corey Oliver. He was an Army recruiter. And Corey looked at me in the mall and he said, "Have you ever thought about going into the Army?" And to be honest with you, I had never thought about going into the Army. But at that moment, life was giving me an opportunity. Just like many of us, Matt, we don't get to choose the color of our skin. We don't get to choose who our parents are. We don't get to choose whether we're male or female. We don't get to choose any of that. But what we do get to choose is our future. And that day I realized that I was getting an opportunity to choose a different future. And I'm so thankful that I was smart enough to take Corey up on that offer. I didn't know my life was going to end up like it is right now, but I knew that he was offering me a way out. And I'm so thankful that I took that way out, and that was the pivot. Now, let me tell you this. In my environment, and I want everybody to listen to me, in my environment, people that come from where I come from, we don't go to the Army. The Army wasn't thought about a favorable place. But let me tell you something, Matt, and everybody that's listening to me. If you're going to transform your life, you're going to have to be willing to close out everybody else in your life who is not speaking a positive word, who is not speaking in a language that's going to help you succeed. And so even my mom, she didn't think it was a good idea. The people in my life didn't think it was a good idea. My friends didn't think it was a good idea. But there was something down on the inside of me that told me that this was going to be a life-changing opportunity for me.
You know, I love what you said there, especially with all the chaos that's going on in the world today. You said we don't choose the color of our skin. We don't choose our parents. We don't choose our economic status, but we do choose our future. And what I love about that message, guys, and once again, for everybody on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher, we've got my man, Dr. Will Moreland, Power of Great Studios. And what he just said there is so powerful, is that it's not a matter of where you came from because you didn't make that choice. But where you're going is you have every choice from that moment forward. And so it's so powerful. So, you know, you talked about how individuals from the city and the community that you were from didn't go to the Army. Talk to me about did you face peer pressure? Did you face a lot of backlash from that decision? And just how much support or lack of support did you have when you made that choice?
You know, up until a week before I was getting ready to leave for basic training, my mom did not believe I was going to the military. I had been telling her for two months, Mom, I signed up for the military. I signed up for the military. Everybody else was asking me, man, why are you going to the Army, man? What are you doing, man? We don't do that, man. Don't do that, man. And a bigger part of the story, man, I had just got kicked out of college. 3 months previous to that, I got kicked out of college. I was on academic probation, and that's how I ended up back home getting in trouble because I couldn't play football any longer. I got kicked out, and so I found myself in trouble again. And that's how I ended up in front of that judge because I didn't have any direction in my life. I knew I couldn't go back to college right now, and I was just hanging out on the streets, and that's how I got in trouble. But all of my friends, they kept saying, hey, man, listen, just get your grades back up, get back into football. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But even with that, man, I wasn't passionate about football. I got a scholarship to play football, but I wasn't passionate about it. I was just doing it because everybody in my neighborhood, that's what we did. That's what everybody said. If you're going to make it out the neighborhood, you either got to, play football, you either got to play basketball, or you got to rap. And so I just picked, football. And but I was never passionate about it. And that was one of the reasons why I wasn't focused in school. I wasn't focused about football because I wasn't very passionate about it. And so to answer your question, man, I had so many people telling me that literally I was getting ready to throw away my life because I gave up football to go to the Army.
It's and there again, I think that's also a pivotal moment, is that you had a fallback plan. You could have continued down sports and done what prototypical people in your community said you needed to do that put you on a status place, but yet you chose to really go with what your heart was telling you. Now, translate that to going into the military. Let's talk about that transition and just how, was it a difficult transition for you?
Very difficult. I'll tell you this, because when I joined the Army, it was the first time I had ever left California. It was the first time I had ever been out of my community where everybody looked like me, everybody sounded like me, everybody talked like me. Everybody the same thing. And so now I get shipped, I get put on the airplane, they send me to Kentucky. When I get to Kentucky, imagine this black dude from the ghetto in Louisville, Kentucky, right? So now I'm in Kentucky, I'm in this bay, I'm meeting people literally from all around the United States. And it was so, I remember calling my mom and talking to my mom and telling her how difficult it was to be around black people who was from different parts of the United States, to be around white people. And then after I got out of basic training, the Army played even a bigger trick on me, Matt, and they put me in Germany. So imagine that. Imagine that, coming from Compton, California. Now I'm in Germany. I'm not only in another state, I'm in another country, I'm in another culture. Now, the only thing that I knew about Germany, well, I knew two things about Germany. I knew about Hitler and I knew about the wall. And so when I told my mom, like, Mom, they're sending me to Germany, she's like, oh my God, you know, I don't think they like black people over in Germany. So now she's freaking out. I'm freaking out. I get over there, man, and here's one of the big things about transformation. You can be in a new location, but if you are thinking with an old mindset, you can't benefit from this new location. So although I was 8,000 miles away from Compton, California, I was still thinking like I was in Compton. So once again, I find myself in trouble. 6 months with inside the Army, I find myself getting ready to get kicked out of the Army. And that's when I met my third disruptor. I was getting ready to get kicked out of the military. And thanks be to God, there was a commander there who saw me, and he saw beyond my anger. He saw beyond my mixed emotion. He said, you know what? I'm not going to kick you out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have you come work directly for me. And when I went to go work for this Command Sergeant Major, his name was Melvin Babs. When I went to go work for Command Sergeant Major Melvin Babs, he began to ask me the questions that really began to change your life. And the first question he asked me was, where do you see yourself 5 years from today? No one had ever asked me that question. No one had ever asked me to think further than where I was. But he asked me, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And do you think the Army can help you get there?
Man, you know, and I tell you, I love what you say. You call it a disruptor. For me, I call them the stop sign. You know, we walk, hearing this and really diving into it, we walk a very similar path, but yet on two sides of the tracks. You know, I'm from a very deep-rooted place in the South where my color was a free pass anywhere I wanted to go. And yet I wasn't given a chance to survive because my parents didn't have fancy bank accounts. My grandparents were seamstresses and painters. And so sports was the only avenue that I had to get out of my situation. And I called them stop signs. I had people that just saw beyond the talent, and somebody who was so dead set on not being in that situation and said, Matt, there's so much more bigger things for you. And so it's so funny as you lay that out that you call them disruptors, because it's exactly what they did. They disrupted everything you thought, felt. And so let me ask you this. You know, guys, once again, we've got my man, Dr. Will Moreland. In 2015, this gentleman was selected as one of the top speakers in the world by Examiner. And I got to ask you, was it one of those moments with that commander that this impact, inspire, and influence really started to evolve? You just didn't know it yet?
It really did. You know, when I look back, and you have to, you know, how we all begin to start reflecting. And when I started looking at the success that I'm experiencing in my life today, that's how I got that. It was someone who inspired me, someone who influenced me, and someone that impacted me. That's what I found in Command Sergeant Major Babs. And when I put those ingredients together, inspire, I had to start getting a vision for my life. And when he asked me that question, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? that began to inspire me. I didn't have to go back to the block. I didn't have to go back to the hood. Then he started to impact me by he began to share with me information. If this is what you really want in life, this is what you need to do. And then I saw his life, and his life began to become the influence, because we all are influenced by someone. We all are influenced by something. And if that someone or that something is not influencing you in the right way, then you're going to be headed down the wrong road. And so that's when that whole thing about leadership began to really swell up in me, where I began to see how powerful leadership was. And that's when I came up with, you know what? We're all leaders. Every single one of us. We're all leaders because each of us have the power of influence. And when you think about influence and when you think about leadership, all that basically means is someone is watching you. That's all that means. And I don't care if you're the dude hanging out on the street. I don't care if you're the gangbanger. I don't care if you're the corporate executive. I don't care who you are. Somebody is watching you. And the very fact that someone is watching you, that means you're a leader. See, I could go out to the block right now and find someone to lead me in hanging out on the block, hanging out on being a gangster. That means they're a leader, man. And when I saw the power of influence, that's what really began to spawn the change in my life.
You know, something else that you really bring to the table as a leader, as a speaker, but more importantly, just as a human being, is I love the way that you include diversity and how you talk about the inclusion of diversity and how you're not afraid to tackle all concepts in retrospect to diversity, you know, and it led you to being selected as the Diversity Leadership Alliance as their Diversity and Inclusion Leader of the Year. Talk to me about the importance of that, and did you feel kind of like it was a full circle moment for you, knowing where you came from and the block that you had to walk away from, so to speak, and to know that now you're really making that true impact for that block?
You know, the interesting thing, and I talked about this earlier on an interview today, is one of the biggest problems that we have right now in our country is that we don't talk enough. So here you and I are an African-American man, a Caucasian man, and we're on this podcast and we're talking. And I wish the rest of the country would begin to do this, because when you don't talk, you're left with assuming. And I'll give you this example. So you just said that, you know, you came from a pretty meager beginning. Well, where I come from, I thought every white person was born with a silver spoon. Every white person was just born with a silver spoon, and as soon as you were born, you got handed a ticket that said success is yours, right? But the more I begin to travel and the more I begin to meet people like Matt Crane, I begin to find out we had more in common than we didn't have in common. And when we don't talk, what happens, you know, I'll tell you this funny story, what really broke the ice for me in diversity, man. I was sitting next to, when I left the military, I worked for the government. I was sitting in this cubicle, and I sat in this cubicle for a whole year with a young Caucasian lady that worked next to me. Her name was Jennifer. And every morning, you know, we would say our pleasantries, good morning, how are you? But we would never talk. We would never engage. And Matt, one day, she was on the phone. We were getting ready to go home, and she was on the phone. And I was listening, not trying to listen to her conversation, but I heard her conversation, and this is what she said, and it literally revolutionized my life. She was on the phone, and she told her friend, she said, I can't wait till I get home. I'm going to fry me some chicken and have me a cold glass of Kool-Aid. She hung up that phone, and I said, Jennifer, I don't mean to get into your business, but did you say you was going to drink some Kool-Aid? And she said, yes. And I said, Kool-Aid, Kool-Aid. She said, yes, Will, Kool-Aid. And so I said, okay, when you say Kool-Aid, what do you mean? How do you make your Kool-Aid? Package, a whole lot of sugar, and you stir it up. Matt, I was 26 years old, and I didn't know white people drank Kool-Aid. I thought it was the registered official drink of the ghetto. I didn't know white people drank Kool-Aid. And so then I said, Will, if you are assuming that, how many more assumptions did you have? And let me tell you what happened, Matt. That day, for another year, me and Jennifer, this white lady from Circleville, Ohio, began to create dialogue every day where she was able to ask me all the questions she wanted to ask about Black people, and I was able to ask her all the questions that I wanted to ask about white people that I had never got to ask, that I was just assuming. And we found out that we had more in common than we didn't. And that began to open up my eyes, and that's when I created this whole concept that we just need to talk more. That's all it is. If we begin to talk more, because you'll find out and you'll start to see how many assumptions you have, just how many assumptions you have that are totally wrong. And I had so many assumptions about all different nationalities that was just so wrong. And the life that I experienced today is because I was able to open up my mind and open up my heart and to realize that at the end of the day, man, we're all humans. That's all we are. We're all humans trying to live this life, man.
Yeah, you know, and you could not have more eloquently put it that way, because I believe that that's what we're blanketing ourselves with assumptions, you know. And I look at my age group of people that talk about our rights. Man, we don't have any rights because we never had to fight for anything. You know, and I had this conversation, and it's funny you brought that up, because I tell people this: I firmly believe that had I been able to meet one of the great historical figures of all time, Dr. Martin Luther King, that he had to take up the banner for a particular race and a particular color of people, because at that time he had to do that. But not one time in the most famous speech of the civil rights movement did he use a segregated word. The second line in that sentence is, all men and women are created equal. And something that I just find so refreshing about what your leadership really stands for is that you, of all people, came from a place that bred the hatred, that bred the segregation and the violence, and it glorifies it, put it on movies. But yet you decided that, you know what? If I'm truly going to live geniusly, if I'm truly going to create impact and inspire and create an influence, and it sounds like to me that if you're truly going to give back to that commanding officer who took the time to really snap you out of reality, that you had to break down those barriers. And I'll tell you, if anything is not being resonated tonight on the podcast that we're airing right now on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and going to 6 different continents, it's that, look, guys, you've got Dr. Will Moreland. He's one of the most highly reputable and respectful leadership and business development trainers, professional development trainers in the world. And yet he speaks about inclusion, and that is some powerful stuff, I got to tell you. So, man, that is something that I tell you, I'm just so thankful that you brought that up, because, man, I'm walking, living, breathing proof that if we could just lock arms together, we could change a lot of things. But it's this predetermined notion that we got to lock up with groups that just causes so much chaos. So, you know, as we come towards the tail end of the show, what I really want to get into for this last little bit is talk to me about what impacts you as you go across the country and you teach impactfulness and you teach this inspiration and influence through your leadership. What's been a moment that you walked away from a session and it just like hit you like, wow, I am just humbled that I get to do this for a living?
You know, the moment I realized that my voice really mattered, it was my first time going to Ghana. I went to Accra, Ghana, and as I was talking to the individuals that invited me over, I was just so overwhelmed that they invited me, and I couldn't believe that they invited me, this dude from Compton, California, to come and speak at this conference. I kept discrediting myself And I kept asking them about all these other speakers. And I kept saying, have you ever heard of this person? Have you ever heard of this person? Why didn't you invite this person? And I'll never forget what the gentleman told me. He looked at me and he says, Dr. Will, we do not know those individuals, but we do know you, and you are the voice that we want to hear. I was floored, man. And that day, in that moment, I knew that even amongst all the other speakers and all the other trainers and all the other people that do similar stuff, I knew in that moment, for those individuals, if I never mattered to anyone else, I knew for that moment that my voice mattered. And if I never got to speak another day in my life, that what I was getting ready to release in that environment and to those individuals, it would impact, inspire, and influence them. And from that moment, I kind of got this confidence that my voice mattered. In the 7.2 billion people on this planet, I may not register with everybody. I may not be liked by everybody. I may not inspire. I may not impact and influence everybody. But there's a group of people out there that's going to hear my voice and be inspired and be influenced and be impacted by what I say. That was the moment I knew that I had a space in this world, man.
That's awesome. You know, what better feeling to know that you've really done something than when somebody says, I'm not worried about those other people. You made the most sense. It's your voice that impacts us. And that's when I know that the goosebumps and then all the pressure and all the above hits you. And you're like, oh, I'm running through the wall now. You know, I'm in. I'm all in. So, you know, what's next for you? What do you have upcoming?
So what do we have upcoming, man? I'm pretty excited right now, man. I get an opportunity to really wake up and do what I love each and every day. And what we're working on right now, I'm in the midst of a boot camp that I'm taking 50 entrepreneurs through this boot camp, and we're showing them how to build their brand, build their business, and build their banking account. And after this 6 months, matter of fact, this week, we're launching another book project where I'm going to be writing a book, man, with 25 individuals, and we're sharing what we call their genius stories. And so it's going to be the 25 Genius All-Stars. And so we're really excited about that. If those of you that are listening, if you have an inspiring story, you want to get it out to the world and you would like to be a part of it and be considered for the book, you can email us at admin@drwillspeaks.com. admin@drwillspeaks.com. We're going to be taking proposals, and we're going to be getting 25 individuals to be a part of this book. It's going to be a bestseller. It's going to touch a lot of lives, because what I want to do, Matt, is exactly what you're doing with this podcast, bringing so many stories of success in front of people that they can no longer admit that they don't have enough to be successful. Because all these individuals you're bringing on your podcast, every time you bring one of us on your podcast, it just knocks down that brick wall that says you don't have enough, you're not enough. It depends on where you came from. You're giving us enough examples that people, if they really want to transform their life, they can. And so that's what these 25 inspiring stories are going to be about, inspiring people to believe in the best of themselves, that they can create their best life.
Wow. Well, I can assure you guys, once again, you heard it there. 25 inspiring stories. He's looking right now for any individual that would love to submit their story. admin@drwillspeaks.com. We're going to have that up on our website. We'll have that up on our social media channels. And I got to be honest with you, this man just doesn't write a book. He writes 40. He just doesn't launch a book. He'll launch 2 or 3 at one time and just break world records. So let's be honest here, guys. When I tell you that this gentleman, when it comes to putting his foot on the gas pedal, he knows what it means to get the work done. And I've never really seen another gentleman, when he speaks, how he really speaks with other people's intentions. He really wants to serve others, and he does it at such a top-tier level. And that's why every year the guy is voted one of the greatest and best motivational, inspirational, professional, and business development speakers in the world. And so, guys, there you have it. The Power of Great podcast with Dr. Will Moreland every week. You know you're going to get the energy. You know you're going to get the people. You know you're going to get all the information that you need. But more importantly, we want you to walk away recognizing that your current situation is not your defining moment. And always, always, always remember this. Success is never measured by what you step out of. Not a car, not a bank account, not a suit. It's always going to be about what you step into. Make your choices wisely, but when you make that decision, you go all in. We'll see you next week.